Hello and
Hell,
welcome. No, it's my turn.
oh, I'm sorry.
I do the whole thing. Yeah, I do the whole thing first. We'll get
You
to
do the
it.
whole
But
thing.
anyway,
I'll
appreciate
wait.
you.
Stand by.
Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, we get to talk about everything in between. Today, this is going to be your part. I have on Kelsey Ramsden. She's the co-founder and CEO of Mindcure. She is also a two-time author of Success, Hangover, and Unconventional Speaker. Kelsey, how you doing today?
Not bad. This is the part where I come in.
Yeah, you can talk now. It's fine. My ego's done. I got my thing out of the way. You're up.
I think the listeners are in and viewers are in for a good time. We've just been like having a solid riff. This is fun. I'm stoked to be here. This is great.
Right? We're going to have an absolute blast. So, Kelsey, first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast, before we get into you and writing books and being an incredible speaker and psychedelics, that's going to be a fun one. Stick around. Why do you love sports so much?
There's two parts to sport that I adore, and they're kind of like on different ends of the spectrum. So I was born. Everybody's born with like a factory setting. I believe it. It's just how you came off the factory line. I was born a bit of a competitor. Like even thinking about it right now, I start to perspire, I salivate, my pupils are dilating. Like there's some people who are just born to kill. And I love that part about it, that part where you can get so focused and nothing else actually even exists, including time. I love that part about sport that's just about working in unison. I love team sport with other people to just at all costs, personal, win, not to inflict pain. And then the other part I love is the kind of the other end of that, which is the camaraderie and the real, the gentleman sport part, which is, I think, in some respects, a dying art, but in other places, I'm seeing far less fighting, just bloodthirst, and more respect for the game and finesse and skill. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you see an athlete doing that.
I think it's a pretty cool area to live in, right? Just as you said, like the bloodthirst. Like there are still people that will go out, but then at the end of the Stanley Cup, they're shaking hands, right? And it's like I couldn't, after 7 games or whatever it ends up being, you're up there in Canada, so sorry for your loss. But after 7 games, however many games it is, like I couldn't, after competing that hard personally, I don't think I could go do something like that. So I always kind of like that, and like the ability for people to not like shut off, but like flip that switch and be like, okay, competition's over. Great job, guys. We all had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we're here to kill each other, and then when the war is over, we can. I think a lot of it is just the respect for. I've always appreciated the worthy adversary. Like it's no fun to play someone who's mediocre. In the early days, it was fun, just like you want to put W's up, and that's good. But once you get skill and finesse and acumen and strategy, it's no fun to play unless they're worthy adversaries. And I think that's what that handshake is about. Is like, well played, sir. You made it worth me coming out.
I love it. Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, as you're saying, when you're younger, like all you want to do is win. And of course, that never leaves, but it's also like, I like baseball. I want to watch a good baseball game. Watching the Mets win like 12-0, it's like, that's cool, but I'm going to turn that game off because I'm sure there's something else I'd rather watch on. So
there's nothing at stake.
That's yeah, exactly. There's no real, I'll use your word, stakes. I like that. So you're an author. I'm an author. So we're both authors. That's kind of cool. What made you want to write a book?
I think in many cases, we go out and create the thing that's very self-serving, like the thing we wanted or the thing we need. A lot of invention goes like that. I think that's you.
I did it.
What's your book called? Tell me about it.
Winning in Sports Business is about how to get a job in sports.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
That's what you wanted. And then you did it and you wrote it. Yeah. Great.
Thanks.
Good book because it's applicable. So my book
also $1 on Amazon, but if anybody shoots me a message, I'll just send it to you for free.
I like your style. Just get the word out. My book I wrote. So my book is called Success Hangover. And, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. I had a success hangover and I needed a way to process it, it's funny because you could either hear that title and be like, so sad for you, like, success hangover. or you can totally relate to, you know, the time you accomplished the thing you thought you wanted to do and you did it and it was great and you stood on your mountaintop and then you went, now what? You know, I spent
Mm-hmm.
all of my everything to get to here, which was amazing. And I didn't really think I would maybe even get here. So I didn't plan for the B side of this track. Or I got here and it's been a while and now my goals have changed. And now I'm kind of interested in some other mountain. But here I am stuck on the top of this one. And a lot of times, you know, and you see it in sport all the time, that people, you know, they define themselves as that thing. Like without the introduction, like, hey, I'm XYZ, I play for the Knicks, they don't have anything to say. And so that to me was what success over Hangover was all about. Was just about that. Okay, I did the thing. I have, but it's less about what you know, what you accomplish and more about being who you are. So for me, it was kind of coming back to what is it that I do, no matter what I apply myself to, whether it's I'm in sport, I'm in business, I'm in my regular life. What's the one thing that I carry across all of that that makes me, you know, my best, potentially the best at that thing? And for me, that is creation and connection. So unless I'm creating something new and I'm connecting with other people in like a really intimate way, not like connection, like, hey, but really driving to the meat of a thing. And every team I led was about that. When we were on a winning streak, it was when we were doing that, building strategy, building plays, and really functioning at the deepest level of the team. And same in business, you know, it's about having a vision and then connecting intimately with it and the other folks. So that's what the book was about. And it did okay. There was a day I took a screenshot. It was like, I beat Tim Ferriss for a day.
Nice.
It was
I
like,
beat Moneyball. Yeah, same one. I have a screenshot. I beat Moneyball. It was pretty sweet.
It's great. It's like,
Pretty cool.
right. It was a good time, but writing a book is not easy. So that's also something I mentioned. So congratulations for sticking with it.
Thanks. Yeah, I could have definitely made it better, but towards the end, I was like, all right, like this was cool, and then I was really flying high, and I'm like, okay, I kind of just want this to be over now. And then I look back, I'm like, shit, like I could have definitely put in a couple more hours of work, but you know,
Hey,
you learn, you live and you learn, right?
that's what my editor told me at the end. They were like, "Okay, we're done." I was like, "Oh," and anyway, she said that's what editions are for. So you put, you
Ah,
know, second edition. You just go and you edit the little bits, or you add a
love
paragraph.
capitalism, man. It is the absolute best. Let's go. So I have to ask, I mean, obviously, like, so first I will say, like, with the success hangover,
Yeah,
that first group of people that were like, oh, poor you, poor Kelsey, like clearly they've never, and maybe I'm overstating it, but many of them I'm sure have never got to that mountaintop, right? That's
yeah,
you know, people that are like, oh, I feel so bad for this athlete because like you've
right.
never been there, so you have literally zero concept of what they're going through. So I completely agree with you on that one. Like I've done a couple cool things in my life, and then yeah, afterwards I was like, oh shit, now what do I do? This is kind of weird. So I have to ask, what was that success, and what was your mountaintop that you climbed?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I was twice named Canada's top female entrepreneur,
Oh,
and it's not
snaps for
bad.
Kelsey. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's okay. Turns out like other people like my awards more than I do. It was, you know, great accomplishments, and I'm honored to have people notice that. But I just like working hard. You know, I just like building teams and creating value, and I like making money, and then all of a sudden when people give you an award or some whatever the case, right? You win the cup, and then everybody thinks you know everything. They're like, "How did you do it?" And I'm like, "I don't know.
Kept going.
It's been 30 years in the making. What did I do? Well, first, I, you know, worked my face off. And there's a great it's not about all about the grind too. It's like, I don't know, partly I had genetics. Partly my father gave me a great example. My mother gave me a great example. I had tons of times I got kicked in the face and it was horrific, and I learned tough. You're never going to sum it up. How'd you do it? And I didn't want to be typecast. I didn't want to be like, that's her. So now I have to always show up looking that part and being that part. And anyway, I was watching watching the Instagram the other day,
Scrolling
and
gets you too.
here's Snoop Dogg, and it's awesome. It's like the best clip, and he's giving like some kind of acceptance. You know, and he's like, I want to thank me for doing this and that, and I want to thank myself for doing this and that, and it was, so for me, Success, Hangover, and awards, and there was a kind of like a spree of awards at the same time. Those were the two kind of most notorious ones, but it was a bunch. And I remember just this feeling of being like, I don't really like it when everybody tells me I've done a good job. Like it feels more, I don't know. Whatever. I know a lot of people like hearing how great they are. I'm not one of them. I prefer constructive criticism and being told what I could do better than being told that I'm doing a good job. So that's my work to do, you know, armchair therapist stuff. But I prefer improvement to salutation.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Because as you said, you're extremely competitive. Like once you start getting those pats on the back, that's not that's not going to make you more competitive. That's literally the opposite. That makes you less competitive. And so the more you can get constructive criticism, or at least ask for it and hopefully receive it, and then
I love
take
receiving
that and then use it, that's how you get better. And that's how you, as you said, put your competition into the dirt. I think I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I'm sure you would have loved to. You would have loved to have said that. I think that's pretty awesome. And then I think that's really, so how about this? We'll do like a 1-for-1. I'll send you my book. You send me yours.
Okay, deal. Done.
I don't know how much mine will be useful for you, but you can send it to anybody. I don't care.
I'm sure it will be useful, and vice versa. You know, I'm sure you've had success and have been hungover from it, but there's some graphic images in it, so you may have to. If your grandma comes over, she's not going to like it.
Oh, geez, I won't show her. It's fine. I just won't show her. So another thing again that I was looking around a little bit. So you're an unconventional speaker. You were a lecturer last year during the heights, the peak, the mountaintop of the pandemic. Let's call it. I guess those two things go together. As I told you prior, I want to be a lecturer. I think that I don't want to be like a full-time professor, just like 2 classes, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, like that, like 6:30-ish, like 2-hour long class. Like it's not my whole night, but I can kind of get it. You know what I mean? So I think that would be a lot of fun. So where did your love of speaking come from? Because I can already tell you got a great personality. That's an easy one. We'll just check that box right off. But where does your love of speaking come from? Why did you want to do something like this? Because I'm sure there's other things you could be doing with your time, right? You don't have to be doing this. I'm sure you wanted to. So where did that come from?
So I was born in 1976, which makes me older than you, and you know, half of the population. Okay, cool. And so when I was little, there used to be this thing called underoos. It was like underwear and a like wife beater, and it would be branded or like licensed from, you know, so I used to have this Wonder Woman pair of underoos, and my parents would have big dinner parties. Like in the 80s, it was like party all the time. So I would put together these like performances for their dinner parties, and I would have this like outfit.
Love it.
And so I always wanted to be a performer. Like as a kid, I thought that's what I would grow up and be. But thankfully, well, maybe not. Anyway, my folks were like, absolutely not. There's no future in that. So I became a business person. But ultimately, I was in the position, having done okay in business, that I could go and perform and speak. And so that's how I took my stages, was as a speaker, because after the awards, you know, folks would want to talk to me. And so I got to travel around the world and speak at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, and like all these, I did a TED, and it was awesome. And but traveling like that is, you think it's sexy and amazing until you do it for a year and you're like, oh my God, are you serious right now? Like, I don't know how these sports guys do it. I watch them, and they're on the road and they're back and they're on the road, and like particularly baseball.
Yep.
I know baseball guys get a hard rap for like maybe not being the hardest core athletes in town, and the football guys think they're harder core, and then the hockey guys are harder core. You know, they all have this like hierarchy thing. But those baseball guys are grinders, man. They're the marathon sportsmen, flying like that and then playing back to back, and like it's nuts. So I it wasn't conducive. I'm a mother of 3 children as well. So it wasn't,
Mm.
you kind of gets tricky. Yeah, so that was my speaking gig and that career. And I still do it sometimes, but the whole professorship thing or the lecturing piece, I was a long shot to get into MBA school because I never really took school too seriously. I do okay, and then I'd kind of like pick up my game to get the final grades, and then
Hmm.
so I applied to every MBA school in Canada, of which there are 13. And when I got the like skinny little thin envelope to the worst school, I was like, that's good. Okay. I'm not going to wait by the mailbox. And then, you got to throw a few Hail Marys. I got into the best MBA school because they liked my essay. And so ultimately I thought, if I could ever come back and teach here, that would kind of be like one of those, like sometimes you just
Oh
want to be like,
yeah. Uh-huh.
I got you.
Love
Watch
it.
this. And so I had the lowest GMAT, which is the entrance exam to get into MBA, the lowest one on our whole class, 320 kids or adults. And yeah, and then I did okay and won some awards and went back and did a victory lap teaching. So it just felt nice,
Mm-hmm. Stick it to him. I like that. I like that a
Pretty
lot.
cool,
That is
you know?
I love that actually. I really do love that. And I
It's
think
like
again,
Rudy's story of academia.
yep. Well, Rudy was offside, so let's not get too far
For
ahead of
sure.
ourselves there. But no, I think it's absolutely fantastic and very clearly how do I want to say this? I didn't go to MBA school. I
Okay.
also don't really understand why people do,
Mm.
especially like directly after college. I believe that there's a lot of positives that can come from it, particularly the networking.
Mhm.
But like if you've never been to like in a business at all, why are you going to MBA school? That's like a whole nother topic of conversation, but it's just a very confusing concept to me.
I
Like, what are we
totally
doing?
agree with you. To keep it short and sweet, this school that I went to requires you to have some
Hmm.
experience between, because to your point, and people ask me all the time, should I do my MBA? And most of the time I say, if you're just there to learn, you can Google that stuff, man. Like, don't
Hmm.
go blow 100 grand on that. You can Google it. But if you want to network, then there's no better
Hmm.
place to go.
I love
So
it. Look at us. We're just like
solving it.
I just need two necklaces. I just
That's
need two
right.
necklaces. So let's talk a little bit about Mindcure. That's why you're here. Well,
Right.
there's a couple other topics. We'll sprinkle them in throughout, but you are the CEO, co-founder. I think president was thrown in there.
True.
Can I pat you on the back now? Because great job. Great job, Kelsey. You're killing it. Very cool. Got some product. I
Mhm.
don't want to give it away. I think it is super, super interesting, super cool.
Okay.
Tell me straight from your mouth, the CEO's mouth, what is Mindcure? What do you do? And what is your mission?
Okay. That's a lot. So I'll
One at a time.
thank you. So for people who don't know otherwise and they heard the word psychedelics and they're like, what's happening?
Hmm. I think
I
that's how I
will
kept them here. They're still here. They're still
What's
listening.
going
They're
on?
waiting. They're like, there's something cool coming up.
The,
Kidding,
the,
of course.
what?
Kidding. Come on. We're having fun. We're having fun.
No, we're cool. We're homies. It's all good. The thing about psychedelics that you might not know, and I'm guessing most of the folks who are tuning into the show are Americans. There are some psychedelics that are legal in America at the moment, of which the predominant one is ketamine. And coming down the pipe is a lot of regulatory change and a lot of research with MDMA and psilocybin, formerly known as magic mushrooms, and LSD and 5-MeO DMT and mescaline and all sorts of things. And we can jam on that in a second. But I just wanted to set the stage for people to know that, like, we're not necessarily talking about totally illicit behavior. You're not luring people down the path towards jail. We're going to keep it all on the up and up over here, and we'll be clear. So what Mindcure does is we have 3 parts of the business. We're a publicly traded psychedelics company. So we're listed on the stock exchange. You can trade us in Canada or the States, which is bizarre in and of itself, like publicly traded psychedelics company.
Love it.
That's right. And we have a line of functional mushrooms products. So these are mushrooms in capsules. So if you're a person who says, I don't like mushrooms, don't worry about it. You won't taste them. And they are nootropics and adaptogens. They don't trip you out. No, no psychedelic effect to these particular mushrooms, but they help with focus, energy, immunity. So that's one part of what we do. Second part of what we do is we have a digital therapeutics platform, which is kind of, in simple terms, it's like an app that your therapist uses and you use to help you have a more meaningful trip and measure your trip and get better outcomes. And then the third piece is psychedelic research. So we develop psychedelic drugs, we test them, and we put them into research to determine if they can help against indications. And ultimately, when we prove those things, then we'll be providing that care to the masses. So we'll be helping people heal all sorts of things. So ketamine for depression is something that's pretty up there. Pain management, PTSD, alcoholism, addiction. There's even some studies in the psychedelics industry around weight loss and, smoking cessation, etc. So there's a lot of things that people are doing with the psychedelic drugs that are advancing how we, look at a lot of mental health issues. And, a year and a half ago, if you'd said to me, Kelsey, you're going to be a publicly traded psychedelics company, 2 years ago, I would have been like, that's not even, it's not even a thing. And here we sit.
Here we are. I think you've reached your second mountain being on this show, by the way. I just wanted to let you know, you should probably read your book again. But no, I think it is super cool. I got some supplements. Is that the correct term?
Adaptogens, supplements. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Adaptogens. That makes me sound a lot cooler and smarter. Cooler. So yes, right. I think, am I taking the lion's mane one? I can't remember. Whichever focuses. I apologize. Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
lion's mane.
And doesn't taste bad. Works for me. Get nice and focused. It's nothing like crazy, right? Like it's not like 7 cups of coffee or anything, but I can definitely tell after using it for a few days, it is, it's there. Something's there. I don't know exactly what it is, but something's there and it's pretty cool. And I like it. So again, appreciate you guys for sending that over. Sure. I guess, so as you said, 2 years ago, you would have never guessed. So how in the last 2 years, what happened to get you to this point to become, a very high ranking person, obviously CEO, co-founder, president, one more time. How did you get there? And I guess what is it about you and the company that has allowed this to happen, if that makes sense?
Yeah, great. So, look, we did part of the intro was around the success hangover. So I was doing okay until I wasn't doing okay, but I still had this job and, businesses and companies and all the things I was doing. And so I became a patient of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy about just shy of 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it helped me tremendously. I never knew I had anxiety. I just thought that's how people who were driven felt. I thought you always felt just like a little bit nauseous, a little bit like, all the things in your head going, so many ideas, so much, and a little bit of stress all the time. I just thought that was like table stakes for success. Mm-hmm. Turns out not everyone feels that way all the time.
Surprise.
Candidly, after my first psychedelic assisted psychotherapy session, I came out the other side and I was like, it's really quiet. And I just remember feeling this very clear moment of like, oh my gosh, that is silly. Like I do like to think I have a couple of brain cells to rub together, but that I never really picked up on what other people had said, that's not normal. It was transformative. And so how did we get here was I was able to retire, because part of the work is releasing yourself from this ego that has to stay attached to its narratives, whether it's trauma or pain or the big I ego, which is like awards and things you can't change. Who would I be if I wasn't? Right? Lots of athletes. So we can, I'll riff on this for a quick second. Lots of athletes are starting to get into this work. So Mike Tyson, you can look at some of his recent announcements. So he was using psilocybin, so psychedelic mushrooms. There's a fellow up here in Canada. He's won the Stanley Cup a couple of times. Dan Carcillo. He suffered a bunch of traumatic brain injuries, and so he's used psychedelics to help himself. Tons of Navy SEALs. So there's a combat sport and just just general highly competitive folks, a couple ultra marathoners starting to use psychedelics to treat either the concussive repair issues. A lot of athletes suffer from depression after their career is over, performance anxiety, like just this high expectation to always be perfect and give, have your best game ever every single day is impossible. Yeah, so how did I get to be here? I suppose the answer is I just was not well. Like everybody thought I was well. I wasn't that well. I got well. I retired, and when I was retired, I just started to see this market coming together, and I thought, this is kind of what I was, I hate to say, but it's one of those things where in your life you're like, it turns out I was born to do this. This is like all the things were kind of leading to this. So I got this MBA. It checks a lot of boxes for the finance guys who fund these things. I've scaled these multi-million-dollar businesses around the globe. That checks a box for some folks. I've dealt in traditionally male-dominated industries. The pharmaceuticals is like that. So it was just kind of like all these things lining up. And I had experience with work. And so here we sit, it was time to do well and do good at the same time. And it's nice to be a bridge, it's nice to be able to approach an industry where both sides. Like I can drop in and be really present and talk about psychedelic work and the healing and the real, like heart stuff. And I can also go into my, competitive sportsman mode and do deals and negotiate contracts and raise money and close big financings. And, so I'm super lucky to be here at this time to do, a bit of interesting work. And who doesn't want to say that they, my brother had a cannabis company. So it came up and they got bought out by a company called Canopy, and which was one of the big two. And so when I called my mom, I said I was starting the psychedelics company. I said, you might have something to share with your girlfriends at the club when they say your son sold cannabis and your daughter sells psychedelics. There might be some
doing up there.
But we've both done okay. In fact, you know what? Okay, so I'm going to bring this around to sport a little bit. My brother was actually drafted by the Colorado Rockies. He played, yeah, he's a baseball guy, and hockey and whatever else, like Canada. But you may have heard of this company. It's called Saks. It's an underwear business, SAXX. Lots of sports guys wear it. A couple of the teams, it's their thing. And it, you may have to bleep this part, but it keeps your balls from sticking to your legs.
I have heard of this. Okay.
So that was my brother's company. So only sharing this to give a little bit of credence to, like, we're not both just drug dealers. We've done other things.
Doesn't matter. As you said, you're doing well and you're doing good. I don't care how you're doing it, because I think we can all agree now that the laws and regulations surrounding most drugs are probably not correct.
Yeah.
I think we can just full stop there. Is that like a good?
Well, so this is a good and important point. I think a lot of people, when they hear about psychedelics advancing, think what we're talking about is selling mushrooms to you down at the local corner shop. And I often say, and this is not to put cannabis down in any way, like God love you cannabis and all the folks who love it. But if we use an analogy, cannabis is like a Toyota Tercel. And psychedelics are like a Lambo, it's a different machine. They both will heal, but one has tighter handling. It's a lot more powerful, and you can have a pretty material wreck if you don't handle it properly. You can still crash on cannabis and maybe gain 300 pounds, but on psychedelics, it's an entirely different bailiwick. And so to your point around regulation, I do not foresee, apart from the decrim, which is a different thing. That just means if you get caught with it, you're unlikely to go to jail. It doesn't mean you will not, just means it's unlikely. It's going to be medicalized. It's going to be it's going to be research backed. It's going to be prescribed by your physician. It's going to be provided under the care of a doctor or a therapist. And so in some ways, I'm really grateful for the regulation around psychedelics. But they also have been used for tens of thousands of years by people who have traditionally practiced work. So, on their shoulders we stand, and I think we have to respect those traditional practices. But those people were apprentices, right? Their father was a shaman, then they learned from them. They spent their whole life learning. They didn't just like rock up at their buddy's place with a bag of mushrooms and say, hey,
like, you guys do anything tonight?
Yeah, let's go talk to God. Like, that's not how it works.
Exactly.
Well, it can, but
it's usually not how it works, though. All those experiences I've had, it wasn't quite the same. But no, I completely agree with you. I mean, back in high school, back in college, we used to see all those, like the government used to have all this research, right? And then they just didn't tell us about it, blah, 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 blah. And it's very clear that, again, under proper control, under proper care. I was reading one of the articles, I think set and setting, right? That's pretty important. 100%. It's understanding what to do, how to do it, and doing it properly, not rolling up to your buddy's house with a bag of mushrooms. It's going to be completely different. It can actually be very effective. I think one thing now that we hear a lot about, Silicon Valley and like microdosing, right? Yeah. That's supposed to be all the rage down there. I've never been to San Francisco, but I hear it's a place. And I think that that's supposed to be something that happens there a lot. Is this, I guess, give me the, where are you on that spectrum? If that is even a spectrum, like how does that work? What are you familiar with it? And like, give me a little bit more on that. Cause I think that's a more common thing people know about, right?
Yeah. So microdosing, absolutely. So also open with, as the CEO of a publicly traded company, I can't support any illicit activity.
Oh, of course not.
So what we're talking about,
this is all hypothetical.
This is, but let's jam on it. So yes, absolutely. Microdosing is a huge phenomenon. It's smaller doses. Dose size usually ranges between 100 milligrams and 200 milligrams for psilocybin, a tenth to 0.2 of a gram, depending on weight and how you metabolize. And so it's generally sub-perceptual, meaning you're not going to know. In the same way, you know, the mushrooms that you took, you don't, like you said, it's not coming to you. You're not seeing anything. But over time, there is a notion that microdosing can increase your focus, clear out the cobwebs, so to speak, and increase performance. And so it's an absolute phenomenon. There's lots of illegal businesses online where you can order these kind of things. And I have a lot of friends who microdose and have done for a while. The one thing I would caution is I think a lot of people don't know that over time you develop tolerance. The tolerance. So over time you develop tolerance. So people who are microdosing for a long time, and you can also get some gut issues if you just do it forever and ever. So there's a cycle that people will tend to go on, whether it's like 4 days on, 4 days off, or you do a week on, a week off, whatever the case may be. Some people do a full month and then take 2 months off. Just depends on what the microdosing protocol looks like. But absolutely, it's a major thing. And I think we may see, there is some research being done. So we may see microdosing becoming a script level dosage, which would be interesting. But like all things pharmaceutical, there's pharmaceutical grade, and then there's the stuff you grow out in your yard, which can still be good. It's not bad, but generally it's kind of inconsistent, and you got to play with dosage and all those kind of things. So the psychedelics industry as a whole is really working towards consistency, repeatability, scientific rigor, etc. So you know what you're getting, and it's not a bad time to be a psychonaut.
I like that. That's pretty good. Psychonaut. That's pretty cool. You're incredible, Kelsey. I want you to know that. I appreciate you being on too. I think this is pretty darn interesting. And again, going back to, I guess, more so on the athlete end, as you said, Mike Tyson's doing some cool stuff. You were an athlete, right? You played rugby up in Canada, played a little field hockey. Sure, you got hit in the head once or twice. As you said, there was that gentleman. I apologize. I've heard his story before. The Thank you. Yes, the NHL player who he has kind of dove into this, and he has seen some very positive effects. What have you, I mean, you obviously told us a little bit about yourself and the anxiety, but what have you seen, I guess, just from, the last 18 months or however long it's been since you've been the CEO? What have you seen in terms of positives in other people that, reach out to you and say, thank you. Oh my gosh, this has helped me in so many different ways. And how do you, sometimes a pat on the back's nice though, right? Like every once in a while.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's okay. Just the small though. Don't make it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all we're looking for.
It's like a hug, like where the 2-tap.
So in terms of athletes, what have you seen in that case? And are you working with any, if you're allowed to say that, are there any people that, you I don't want to say do research on, that sounds a little funky, but like, what are you doing from that standpoint, the athletic standpoint?
So I mean, I'll start with the concussive stuff and talk a little bit about that, and then I'll move into some of the broader athlete-scape.
I ask such long-winded questions. I apologize.
It's okay.
That's like my one thing.
It's meta. It's meta. There's a lot in there. It's meaty. So when I played rugby, I was second row, and I don't know how much you know about rugby, but you do like this for a while. It's called the scrum, and the people in the middle, they're the hookers. Yeah. And then for anyone who like maybe hasn't, because Michael's up to there's a front row, and then there's the second row. And the second row are the people who put their heads in between the other people's hips and they get pulled together. So that's me in the second row. And then you break and you're supposed to be the big tacklers. So there are a number of games after which, and this was before paying attention to concussions was even really a thing. I was playing for the Valkyries, which is a varsity team out west, and the number of games after which I didn't know, where we were going, what city we were in, and it was numerous. But I didn't think anything of it. I mean, you're 20, whatever. You're like, yeah, good game. We won. Are we partying? Let's do that. And now I have come to understand that a lot of the things that I was suffering with are symptoms of this like recurring concussive state, TBI. And so anxiety can be one of these things. Depression can be one of these things. Addiction can be one of these things. And so I went for the mental health, and I suspect strongly that what I was actually treating was a brain injury. And some of the least likely sports are actually the ones with the greatest amount of repeated concussions. So soccer is one of those sports where actually those players are more highly concussed than football players, because football players are actually wearing something on their head when they take something to it. Soccer players, when they're actually heading a ball, you look at the like velocity and the redirection, they're taking, I'm going to get this slightly off, but I think it's 40 pounds of pressure per square inch to take a punch in the face.
Wow.
Versus 70 to 80 pounds per square inch to take a ball to the head. And yeah, so I mean, soccer players probably aren't doing super well. Obviously, hockey players are doing a lot of fighting without their helmets on. And so there's a variety of sports for which these folks who played even in their youth and even in regular traditional sports, you didn't have to be a pro player to be harmed, or finding these kind of secondary things. So when we talk about the athletes, there's some names I won't name, but I'll share in generalities. So some folks who have suffered from addiction and might be basketball players that you might have heard of, have used drugs like ibogaine. So ibogaine, it comes from a root in Africa, the iboga plant. It's a very long trip. So this isn't like a 4 to 8 hour mushroom trip. This is like 12 to 24 hours. Really intense, but cure rates. So meaning no withdrawal, which is a big deal for opiate addicts, no withdrawal and no cravings afterwards. 72% of people who do iboga treatment, whereas a traditional, addiction recovery program in the States gets between 12 and 14% success rates. So like material difference. So that's addiction. And some folks in that, of course, I mentioned Mike, he might have had a few concussions, and for him, it's psilocybin. And it's, anger, rage, emotional kind of inability to regulate. And then, I think it's reasonable to talk about the folks in the military, because I think actually they're probably the greatest athletes going. They just don't have titles and they don't get rings. And a lot of those fellows are not only suffering from PTSD as a result of their service, but oftentimes repeated blasts. So they're near blasts. So it actually, you don't feel it, but in between your brain itself and your cranium is a fluid. And when the blast comes through, it impacts the brain. So you don't know you're getting hit, but your brain's getting hit.
Wow.
And it can happen from artillery fire, and it can happen from like large blasts. And a bunch of these fellows are going, and women are utilizing MDMA for PTSD, and some are using Ibogaine for TBI. So I think, if you're an athlete and you're listening to this and you're thinking, gee, that sounds like me, I'm not doing the best with this, how do I get my hands on this stuff? A couple of things I would mention is there's some great studies going on. So MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, is in the States. They do great research, predominantly around PTSD. Then you've got some folks out at Stanford. They're doing stuff with some war vets. If you go down into Mexico, there are clinics that are open doing Ibogaine treatment and these kind of things. So I would just say, hit the good old Google and look for, a well-respected research institution or locations, outside of America, because ketamine is legal in the States, but all these other things we're talking about, 5-MeO-DMT, it's toad venom, it's not legal in the States. Peyote, not legal in the States. Mushrooms, but it's coming. We're doing the research that's right. Provided we do the good science, right? Because the science will move the regulation and the story will move the culture. Because there still is a culture of people who are afraid of psychedelics. It's like, that's for druggies and hippies and the other weirdos and freaks. But I would say, as a 45-year-old mother of 3 who has a little bit of paperwork to support the fact that I am occasionally a rational adult, I think the more people like myself, like respected people in society, like war vets and these kind of people who can come and tell their stories about, it's not about going on a trip and getting high. It's about healing our brains. And the research that's coming back is talking about neuroregeneration. We have a guy on our team, Dr. Dan Engel. You should check him out. He's done a lot of good work. He's a board certified psychiatrist and neurologist. And he works with some of the biggest names in sport and around concussive repair. And they've done a tremendous amount of research that actually, through scans, show the 2 hemispheres of the brains reconnecting and growing new neural pathways. Like, it's mind-blowing stuff. So it's real science. And it's not for the faint of heart, because as we know, it's not always easy. But if you're in sport, that like training hard only makes it worth it. Mm-hmm. And the same is for healing. So, there's lots of hope out there for the folks who are suffering, which is a nice thing to be involved in.
Yeah, that is, as you said, doing well and doing good. I think that it is pretty important. And as you said, like, there's the very clear science that backs it. I'm sure there's a lot more that you guys are going to do. I'm sure there's a lot more that you have to do. And there are still a lot of people that like, oh no, you can't touch. I mean, there's still people that don't think weed is like, they still think weed's the devil, right? So like, there's a lot of people you're going to have to overcome with this, especially people in the government, because politicians are the worst. But I do think that it's definitely, as you said, you're doing good work, and there's a very clear connection on how you can help people, specifically athletes, but many, many different people. Like you said, anxiety. How many people have anxiety, right? Like that number is way bigger than the number of people that are ever going to play sport in their entire life, right? So I think it's pretty cool that you get this opportunity to help so many people. And as you said, it was almost kind of like you were born. You made it here, and once you're like, ah, shit, yep, all right, I guess rope me back in. But at least it's a cool thing you're doing now, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the future I see for psychedelics applies to everyone, though. I mean, I think ultimately, once we get past this kind of like mental health thing, we're going to get into mental wealth, which is the optimization of the human by utilization of psychedelics. We opened the segment around psychedelics talking about microdosing. There's bodies of research and lots of folks who are just like, black opsing the work around performance, because the level of clarity and focus, this like total connection biophysically to self, and ability to adapt how we connect with the kind of the deepest resource that we have is really tremendous. And I think what we'll see is this, like, the mental wealth really being the next frontier.
Yeah, I always find that as an interesting topic of conversation, right? It's like, let's just get back. Let's just get people to okay. It's like, why don't we get people to great? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff oh, you're not doing good. Okay, let's just get you to passable. Get you a nice C plus. Like, what are we doing here, guys? But I don't know. I love it. I think you're doing some incredible stuff, Kelsey. This is so cool. So tell me, where can we find you? Because I'm sure you got some cool stuff to say. Being, one more time, the 2-time female Canadian Entrepreneur of the Year. Get that right?
Accurate. Yeah.
Author, speaker. Where can we find your book? Where can we follow you online? Where can we follow Mindcure? Where can we buy Mindcure? Where can I invest in Mindcure? Give me all of it.
All right, let's run it down. So I'm Kelsey Ramsden. It's spelled out here, and you can find me on all the socials. Mindcure, same jam, just Mindcure or Mindcure Health. Yes, we're traded on the OTC down in the States. That's over the counter. And up in Canada on the Canadian Stock Exchange, Canadian Securities Exchange, our tag is MCUR. Up in Canada and in the States, it's MCURF as in Frank. And you can buy the products online. Same thing, just look up Mindcure Health, and you'll be able to find that there. The book is sold where all good books are sold. So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd say, just pick up Mike's book while you're at it,
Love it. Get a twofer in there. Not too bad. Look at that.
Back.
They should have brought our books to space. Do you think he brought a Kindle with like all the books on the Amazon store to space? That way we could say we were in space. That would have been pretty cool.
Oh, see,
marketing, man. That's where my mind comes from.
And needed you there.
Just saying. But Kelsey, this has been absolutely incredible. One more time, Kelsey Ramsden, co-founder, CEO, president, author, Mindcure. Absolutely incredible. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Michael. It's been great to be here, man.